Welcome to Real People, Real Voices. I'm your host, James Jackson.
I'm your co-host, Pastor Wayne Moore.
Always a pleasure to host with you.
It is a pleasure to always be in your presence and to know that God is in this show.
Yes, sir.
He's in this show, and the community even lets us know that. And I hope that God will keep us here a long time doing what we're doing to help our community.
And helping us to be here are our sponsors.
Yeah, tell us who we
Lee
have.
Castle and Crawley.
We also have Fervent Care Christian Academy with us, and then we also have Marion County Public Health Department. They're with us, and if you want to be a sponsor, call
Well, they can call WHMB TV 40.
WHMB TV.
Ask for Curtis Baker.
Ask for Curtis Baker. Yeah, that's who I want to talk. And he'll get you going in the right direction. Tell you, I want to be a sponsor of Real People, Real Voices, and I want to be there to help them.
And we're in the midst of the holidays, so we want to say, of course, it may already be past. Happy Thanksgiving. And coming.
Coming, yeah. Christmas is on the way.
Christmas.
Thanksgiving is coming. And we want you to have a blessed time in those particular holidays.
New Year's coming up.
Yeah, got a lot coming up, and we plan to be here.
We plan to be here.
We plan to be here.
And please go to YouTube, and you can look us up on YouTube, WHMB TV 40. Subscribe while you're there. You can watch this show as well as others. And like us on Facebook.
I love it when you say that, Jay. And we want to be liked because we want to be there for you.
Yeah. We've got a great guest coming up, so don't go away. We'll be back after these messages. Welcome back to Real People, Real Voices, and we're joined by Mark McFattridge. Welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks so much. I'm proud to be here.
Happy to have you, Mark.
Thank you.
So tell us what you do and how long you've been doing it.
Yeah, great. So I am the director of the Old National Bank Center for Closely Held Business at Butler University. What we focus on is helping closely held businesses be successful. I've been really fortunate, as we were talking off air. I'm a two-time Butler graduate and went off and had a career and got called back to help serve the university. So I've been back about a year, almost exactly, right now. So it's been awesome to be a part of the university.
First time I've heard this particular term, closely held businesses.
Yes,
Help
sir.
us to understand that.
Yeah, privately held.
Okay.
So not a publicly owned company, not a non-for-profit. So it could be the three of us that went into business together. It could be a family business. It could be up to 30, 40 individual investors, but privately held, not publicly traded, and not non-for-profit.
Oh, that's good.
And when you talk about helping them to achieve their goals, say more about that.
Yeah, so really what we do is we'll go in and we're a membership-based organization, so we'll bring a member on board. We'll perform an assessment, and we really dig in deep on their goals and objectives, their missions, their values, but then we'll get down to the technical side. What are their products like? Who are their competitors? What types of things are preventing them operationally from achieving what they want to do? So we'll put this assessment together that really helps the company understand where they are today, and then we'll sit with the leadership group and say, okay, what do you want to be when you grow up? And then we'll identify gaps between where they are today and where they want to be. And then we'll help make introductions or connections either through our own consultants that we have on staff or with accredited partners. We have accredited partners in 12 different categories, from accounting, banking, risk management, wealth management, that type of thing, that we can then introduce these companies to that help them achieve their goals.
So you talk about business stability, basically, how to stabilize and project future for a particular business.
Yeah.
If I'm on point.
Yeah, pretty much. Or I mean, really, if you take a step back and say, okay, some entities may want to just grow organically and keep at the same pace, and we can help them do that. Some may be ready to transition to a family member, so succession planning could be a role in that. Or some people may be ready to conquer the world and go public, and we can help them get to that stage as well.
When we talk about helping businesses to increase value, say more about that.
Yeah, so really the value creation is helping them just increase the wealth of the business for their ownership group or their employees to help pass that down as well. So really anything that builds that value and keeps the company growing.
Tell us a little bit about the Lacey School.
Yeah, Lacey School of Business is now the largest college at Butler University. Just has been an amazing ride. Back when I came to school in 1986, obviously Butler didn't have any standards because I was able to get in. But now it's just an amazing school. We just opened a brand new building in August. It's just an incredible facility, over 100,000 square feet, totally dedicated to the School of Business. It's built to bring in the community, the business community, to interact with our students. So really cool facility, but even more so, our focus on experiential education for our students is amazing. Each student that comes in, each undergraduate student that comes in is required to have 2 internships before their 4 years is up. So they're getting real world experience before they ever go out into the employment world.
Let me ask you a question. You know, the city of Indianapolis, as we know it to be, is becoming a very, very busy city as it relates to construction development. How does Lacey look at that, if they do look at that, as it relates to the businesses that will be here, like the 16 Tech and et cetera, the new IU that's going to be coming here in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years?
Yeah.
Tell us what you think about that.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's interesting. Again, going back to my undergraduate days, Butler was not really connected to the business community within the city of Indianapolis, and we had our own little Butler bubble almost. Yeah. That's completely the opposite now. Everything we do is centered around being in front of the business community and being a part of it and playing a role in it, including, 13 years ago, we received a grant from the Lilly Endowment to start the Butler Business Accelerator, which is a consulting firm that helps businesses. We have an executive education program. We partner with the Central Indiana Small Business Development Center to help businesses. My center helps businesses. So we're really now ingrained in all that. And so it funnels down not only through our side of things, but also through the education. So we're constantly involved in those types of discussions and trying to figure out what those employers need from our students and helping them get there along the way.
Yeah.
And one of the services, as we understand it, you all provide is to women and minorities. And how are you all doing that?
Yeah, we just have a special focus that we want to make sure that we're helping everybody grow and reach their dreams. And if we can reach down and partner with women and minority-owned businesses to help them achieve their goals, we're all better off that way. So just a special focus.
And exiting business, there are businesses at some point that decide to exit. And as I understand it, you all provide services there too.
We can do that, yeah. One of the things that we want to make sure is if a company is ready to exit, we want to make sure that they're going to maximize the value when they do that. You can exit in a variety of ways, as we talked about. You can pass down to another generation. You can go ahead and sell, or you can go public and go along those ways. There are some other ways, but generally those are the 3. And so our role is to help them be in a position where they maximize the value. But then we can also make the connections. If you're going to sell your company, we can make connections with potential buyers to help go that route as well.
Outstanding. Yeah. And if people want to avail themselves to your services, how might they do that?
Yeah, you can call me. I think we're going to post our website during the show. Certainly can reach out through that way. You can learn a little bit more about the membership that we have and what that looks like, and our accredited partners are listed on that side as well.
Question, how do you get into the Lacey School?
How do you get into Lacey School?
Yeah.
I think
you said they let you in. So
yeah. Well, now they have standards, so I don't know. Now you go through the standard application process and elect to major in one of our school business majors, college business majors.
How many majors do you have? Maybe that's the question they ask.
Within Lacey School, that's a great question. I don't know that. They don't let me talk to the students.
Okay.
You've been a great guest.
You've been a great guest.
This is awesome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing with us.
Yeah.
Thank you all for being here. We'll be back after these messages. Welcome back to Real People, Real Voices for our special segment, following up with the guest that we just had. Dr. Moore is talking about small businesses
Right.
and businesses in general,
Closely held business.
closely held businesses.
Yeah.
One of the areas in there we talked to them about was the services they provide to women-owned and minority-owned businesses, and that kind of thing. And I want to kind of go back a few years ago, around the time when I first met you. You convened a meeting at your church
Right.
in the old section,
Yeah.
and Attorney Lee was moderate. Well, he was the guest speaker, and he talked about the necessity of vendor contracts.
Right.
This is several years ago,
Right.
and
To your point, it hadn't gotten any better.
well, it predates the
predates.
it predates the current
Yes,
administration,
it's probably worse than it was then.
It is.
Yeah, it is worse.
as we understand it.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about that with our guests, and we were talking off air. You would think things would get better,
Right.
and the need for vendor contracts, particularly minority contracts.
Right.
Here now in 2019, the Concerned Clergy and the Baptist Minister Alliance convened forums. And in one of those forums, the subject came up again, vendor contracts, particularly with women-owned and minority-owned
And veterans.
and veteran business owners
And Latinos.
and Latinos
Now we have the LGBT community
included.
included now. And blacks, Afro-Americans, let me say it that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you're talking about tens of millions of dollars.
Right.
And we asked for the numbers, and less than 8% over the last 3 years. The goal, I thought it was law, but the correction was made by the individual who's tasked with that responsibility with the city of Indianapolis now, that 15% is a goal. And for the last 3 years, it has been less than 8%.
Yeah, and you have to understand that that is also stroked with a big brush. You know, so if you say you have minorities and women, well, Afro Americans and women and veterans, Latinos, the acronym community, that 8% rests in that area.
So a leaner slice of
Yeah. So Latinos
that.
might get 0.5, Afro Americans might get 1.5, the acronym group might get 2. You know, so that's. But those are for minority contracts. So where's the other 92% going? So that's what people in the community are concerned about. Maybe you need to explain to them what a vendor contract is, so they'll know what that is.
Yeah, well, if you are fortunate to get one, that is when the city of Indianapolis will contract you to be part of a project or to provide financial resources for you to do something that will benefit the city of Indianapolis and the people that live in the city.
Right.
Suffice it to say.
Yeah, right.
But when you have $100 million or $90 million or more, I should say if you have $90 million of public money or you have $100 million of public money or more, and less than 8% goes to all these different groups, and again, if it's a goal, you're not really held to account. Why is it important from your perspective as a community leader and as the president of a historic Black civic agency? Why is it important that they not only meet the goal of 15% but exceed it?
It's just fair. I mean, it's just fair. I think it's just fair. I mean, you got to understand many years ago that 15% only rested for the Afro-American community. But now the minority, when we talk about minority contracts, the whole minority issue has changed. But it's still fair. It just ought to be fair. You're going to 15%, which is at one time was law or still might be law, and you've only met 8%, and you think that's great? No. It basically says that there are a group of a select few who are going to get those contracts. And we just heard recently on one of our other shows about a young man who was talking about business that in our community, there are businesses that are just not there. And many years ago, they used to have programs to where they had set-asides. And in those set-asides, you could become a sub, and if you worked hard enough, you could become a prime. I think those kind of programs
Bring those back.
We need to bring those programs back. You know, we talk about this concept of one city. Economically, it has never been one city. And so that's a forest.
Well, if you're talking about a pie.
Yeah, it's never been that way. It's never been that way. Just look at what's going on right now. Just in all areas, Dr. Green will call them deserts. It's just not happening. It's just not happening. And we're not being critical. We're just making observations.
Those are facts.
Yeah, those are facts. And politicians need to stop being so concerned about the fact that just because you disagree that that's blue or orange, we ought not to stop being friends. We just have a disagreement about something.
Well, people have to be held to account.
Yeah.
Because if you're talking about less than 8%.
At less than 8%.
And if the goal or the law,
Right.
because it seems to be a gray area there,
Right.
is 15%. I've always thought if you have 100% of a pie, who makes the decision as to how you divvy that up?
Right.
And with regard to minorities, we have a president of the city council that's black or minority. The chair of the Economic Development Committee for numerous years now is minority.
Right.
So we should be further ahead, in my opinion.
Well, I think the minority community ought to be further ahead. We need to be clear. We're just not
Further ahead on that issue.
on that issue. And I'm not just talking about just people that look like me. I'm talking about Latinos too.
Yeah, well, when we talk about minority,
That's what I'm talking
whole
about.
thing,
The whole gamut ought to be in the pie and have a piece of that particular pie. 8% is sad, especially when you got billions of dollars that will be coming through this particular city within the next 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And you only got 8%
or less.
or less.
Now, as we understand it, and
If you look at each ethnic group, it's less than 1% almost.
and we look, and from what we hear, there's apparatus in place to make that better going forward.
I've heard that for years. I've heard that for years. Me personally, I think I think it's going to remain on course. If not, I will be the first to say I apologize for saying that, but I don't think it's going to change. I don't think in the next 4 years you will reach the 15%.
Well, I would say to that, and for those folks who are talking about holding Mayor Joe Hogsett, who has been reelected, and he congratulations, congratulations on that reelection. But folks are talking about holding the administration accountable to those metrics, the 15%. But I think they ought to go a little further and to say, well, not just 15%, but let's double that, and let's say that the goal or the ordinance would be 30%. Because here we are in 2019, you have 100% of public money that could exceed $100 million and for minority contracts. These are minority folks, and as you've made the list, women, that could be any woman of any any color, and so on. So 30% of 90 million or 100 million or 150 million dollars, I think the folks who have the influence to precipitate this idea, to say we want it not at just 15% goal because it's been there a long time, but for more fairness, because it's not equal. If you got 100% pie, 30% is not 50%.
Right.
Equality is 50-50, I thought.
Well, here's another thing that that happens to some companies, not all companies, to where they have a percentage to make sure that minorities are involved in these contracts that they have. And at one time, if you didn't have those minorities involved, you would have problems having that contract honored. I think that they need to go back to that. I think when companies say, well, I have 30% minorities, okay, great. You ought to have the contract. But if you don't have a certain percentage of minorities, You ought not continue to receive those contracts.
That seems to be a big problem, particularly in Indianapolis.
Particularly in Indianapolis, and when they do get the jobs, they give them a radio and a stop sign. So, and that's what with minorities. And people might say, "Well, he's just talking about." No, I'm talking about minorities. When you go, women are doing that. Latinos and Hispanics are doing that. Afro Americans are doing that. They give them a radio and a stop sign. These companies need to be mandated to have apprenticeship programs if they get these contracts to develop trades.
And I would say to make sure they have also a line of credit, help these business owners to get a line of credit for sustainability, because a lot of times you can get the contract, and you're going to have to wait. You're going to have to wait on the city to pay you.
Yeah, and that might take 3 or 4 weeks or months. So you got to have a substantial amount of resources to keep your company going, to make payroll.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if it's by design or not, but it feels like it.
Well, Plato, in Plato's Republic, it's a good read.
Yeah.
It's in that read, it's by design.
Yeah.
And you know, the oligarchy, they have a tendency, folks get together and they determine what this is going to look like. And they make sure that they have people in place to make sure this stays in place. And that's the thing, I think, as pastors and I think as leaders and folks who are watching, who are in positions of power and influence, we have to make sure that we break this up. It cannot continue. 15% on $100 million?
Right.
And you're not even making 15%.
And stop giving people enough to keep them quiet and not to make a difference.
Yes.
And that's what happens in our city. We give them just enough to keep quiet, but not enough to make a difference.
Yeah,
that's what happens.
I had an old preacher tell me, he said, well, they're never going to give you more than $50,000. And this was years ago.
But now you've lived and saw it happen.
And I've seen it. I've seen it happen. Yeah. And so and I've served on some boards. One of the first boards I served on was the Board of Public Safety. They don't have that anymore, which is different from the Merit Board. And the individual that encouraged me to get on that board and who helped me get on it said, it's important that you follow the money. And I would go to these meetings, and some of the same vendors, some of the same people would get the money over and over and
that
over
hadn't
again.
changed.
Yeah.
That hadn't changed. All you got to do is just ride through the city, and when some construction work is going on, same companies.
And I think in my final remarks here, that's the difference between an administrator on the council and a real leader.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. And it's really easy to make this one city.
Yeah.
It's real easy. All you got to do is listen to people and work with them and not be bought off by high dollar folk.
Yeah. That's it. We'll see you next time.
We're going to have more of this dialogue.